Somebody asked me to do a little history on some of these machines. This 637 came from the J.R. Simplot's mine, phosphate mine, on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation. It was called the Gay Mine, G-A-Y. It was named after his daughter Gay. They didn't literally mine gay people there, but anyway. We bought this in 1980, had 14,000 and some odd hours on it. It had been double shifted for 7 years, and she was in pretty rough shape when we got it. I've replaced the hard nose panels. The front end's been in a collision. There's that much missing off the front of the fuel tank, and it was all scabbed together. It's welded on. She was pretty bent up, beat up. But anyway, we paid $67,500 for this old girl in 1980. Interest rates were 21%. So paid a lot of interest on it, but the components had all been exchanged and rebuilt by the cat dealer. It was 100% maintained by them, and it ran for 3 years. That's how long we financed it for, was 3 years. If you can't pay for something in 3 years, you should not have it. That's my opinion. So anyway, it ran for 3 years, not a lick of trouble. Just ran and ran and ran. We refer to this one as number one. Now, it didn't have an enclosed cab either when I got it. So that's number one. This other wide nose is number two. This is a 79P series. They're the ones that had the cushion hitch attachment. This is a 79P 1083. And this originally came from Brodus, Montana. And we didn't buy it from them. I bought it from Tupper Construction in Chalice. I don't know. I think I paid $35,000 for it. She was in pretty tough shape. And we call it number two. Now, this is the Filthy Whore we call number three, and I got it from Mike Tupper also. The Filthy Whore was one nasty-looking old gal. Now, you can see over there on the ground, number two likes to leak on the ground. The Filthy Whore is spotless. She doesn't leak a drop nowhere. She's tight. And we rebuilt the engine here a couple of years ago. It's nice and clean. The only thing I've got left to do on this one is change the old canister style oil filters over to spin-ons. And let me show you what both number one and number two have spin-ons now. And that's what I did. I mounted them up there. And how that works is you get rid of the filter housing down there, and you put an oil manifold off a 1693 on there. You got to have one off a non-retarder 1693, and then it works. Anyway, this has been a good old scraper. She doesn't load worth a crap because the whole frog in the front of the floor is bent up, and it's been that way since we got it. I got a brand new floor laying over there to put in it. All right, the Filthy Whore on it, she's not a finish machine. That center cutting edge is a 19-inch wide cutting edge off of a 657. Now, we had to cut, I think, a hole off each end to get it to go on here. But that will cut the hard stuff, and that's why we put it on the Filthy Whores. We'll take it out when we really got some hard pan we got to bang through. And you put the Filthy Whore behind the other two and start pulling it, and she'll motor right through the hard pan. But this old girl's seen some abuse. The tree on the hitch up there, you can see, has been plated and welded together. That crack right there, we broke that. But this whole thing was nothing but a grease ball and an oil leak and a mess when we got it. And that's why we called her the filthy whore. But we've since cleaned her up and got it in pretty good shape. Now, looks like I got to put a new seal in that steering ram. I've got a leak there, but we've done the bull rams. But this scraper originally was bought together with another one. They were one serial number after the other one, and these were purchased by Robert Burgraff Construction in Idaho Falls. They sold out several years ago, but they had two of these, and I don't know what happened to the other one. Don't know where she went, but it's not very often that you see one of these old scrapers with straight rear fenders on it. Not a ding or a dent in them. They're in really good shape. Now this old girl has, she's push-pulled a lot, and you can tell that by how much wear there is on that hook. Now that's a little older hook than these over here. Either that or it's wore that bad. You can see how much thicker this one is. And number two has, this is a 3306. The whole power pack. I bought this whole assembly from Yellowstone Valley Parts in Billings, Montana. Bought the whole thing complete, transmission, everything. This came out of a D-series scraper. This is a PC motor, pre-cupper. This one's rated at 250 horse. So this has got the big radiator in the back. Anyway, you don't overheat this one ever. And I don't overheat this one either because direct inject motors don't put as much heat in the water as PC ones. But years ago, what I did is I went over to Gillette, Wyoming. I don't think it's there anymore, but it was called Jack's Heavy Equipment. And I had them cut a stinger off of a junk scraper because this one was not set up with this. And so what I did is I cut the tubing off here and then gouged this loose here, the strapping, and did the same thing down here. And then I just took this whole assembly and welded it onto the frame and turned this one into a push-pull. Well, it's a pull, not a push. And the reason that you can't change a non-push-pull 37C over to push-pull is the frame, and I'll show you. So this is a 79P series. You see it's got a flat belly pan on it. And that's because the frame is so much thicker in here. And this whole assembly does not bolt on. This is welded onto the frame. So you're not taking that off. But this is a 65M series. That's what the non-push pulls were, was 65M. So you see how thick that belly pan is? About 8-9 inches thick. So a push-pull one has that much more frame. And then the bumper on these, you can see it's welded to the frame. It's part of it. So when they came out with the D-Series, they made them so that you can unbolt the bumper and you could bolt a push-pull assembly on it, which is what they should have done with these from the get-go, but they learned. But this is just my opinion, but this is probably the best scraper Caterpillar ever made, the C-Series. The bowls are a foot narrower than the D's and the E's and the G's. They load better. They load faster. They're not as heavy. They don't burn as much fuel. These old pigs will move incredible amounts of dirt. Incredible. Anyway, these are the old girls that's what gave Cat its name in the scraper department. After about 1970, that's when they invented the eight-speed semi-automatic transmission, and they're pretty bulletproof, and it just makes a hell of a scraper out of them. Anyway, I like running them for finish work and doing side hill stuff and crazy things. This scraper right here is the best. It's the lightest. It's light on the front end, on the snoot. One drawback to push pulls is that bale, that push block. When you get tipped down, you'll be bulldozing that in the ground. And when you're push pulling, you got to be careful, because if you're poking it in the ground and getting dirt on it, that defeats the whole purpose of putting grease on the plate. And you've got to put grease on here so they can slide up and down on the back of that stinger. I was telling you before, you can't pump load these scrapers because that stinger is going up and down on here, and it grates and causes all kinds of racket. So one of the things you'll notice is this up here. So if somebody lifts their back end up too high, that'll stop it from going through the radiator. So the Filthy Horror, they didn't build them that way. They never had any. So we put one on it for in case. We had to replace the top tank on the radiator years ago. And what happened is they must have raised the rear end on a scraper and shoved that whole bell assembly into the radiator, because there was two dents matching those pieces of iron welded on there. You can see that bale's been broken too a couple times. So I got lucky and I got a tank that's off of an old 631, just a regular scraper, single engine scraper. It didn't have a dent in it, so we put that one on there and fixed it. And so number 3, she's moved a lot of dirt, and it was a local scraper. So I am the 3rd owner of that scraper. I don't know how many hands that's gone through, and the 2nd owner on this one, J.R. Simplot, originally owned that. They had 3 of them. They traded in to Lakeshore, who was the Terex dealer, and they bought Terex's the next go round. Anyway, 1980, interest rates were 21%. They could not get rid of these old girls. So 67.5 is what I paid for it, and it's been a really good machine. I'd like to blast the rest of these and paint them with cat urethane yellow, make them look new.
It's alright, it's alright. You know I love this life I lead.